Hey guys, Birdie here, and I am coming to you to do the May Sweet Strawberry Joy Box. This is a banner shaped sign, and I love the fresh sweet strawberries. And I'm excited to see how you guys decorate yours, because there's so many ways that this could go, and I can't wait to see your style on it. But let's get started with our tutorial. So what do you get in the box? You've got your insert here. Down at the bottom on the left, again, for those that are new, and just a reminder for those who have been with us, if you're looking for any of the information, links to the tutorials on our website if you want to stay off of Facebook while you're crafting. There's also the login link if you need to change anything with your membership. There's the link for Facebook, and then also my email. So if you need anything, have questions, concerns, whatever that might be, email is the best method to get a hold of me. There's the picture for reference there. And then on the right side are your 4 steps to getting crafty. Make sure to write yourself on the calendar. Schedule your time. I know everyone's busy, and it seems like every month a new thing comes up. Even with me, like this month I have graduation and time is super tight, but it's important to schedule our time for ourselves, for our sanity, to refocus, to just have some alone time to clear out our minds. And I'm looking forward to crafting for that purpose. I mean, especially this month with graduation coming up. Open your box and inspect all the items right away. Let me know if anything is missing or damaged, and we will get a replacement out to you. Everything's packaged in-house by me, and so sometimes I make a mistake and overlook things, so please let me know if anything's missing. And then when it's your day, you can watch the video in the Facebook group or on the website. Put that do not disturb sign on your door and enjoy your time. And then, as always, make sure to post a picture in our group, or even if you're not wanting to be in the group, email it to me. I'd love to share it with others for you. I think sharing our projects is super important in our creativity. It helps us build confidence. Putting our art, our work out there is a scary thing, but the more we do it, the more confident we become. And we get feedback, we get feedback from the group, and we're just sharing each other's journey, and it helps inspire others as well. What you share and how you do something might spark creativity in someone else. So you're not only building confidence in your work, but inspiring others. So it's just a great thing to share what we do. And then in this little section here, just tells you what you should be expecting in the box. So this month we have our banner base and a piece of jute for hanging our sign, which mine's up here. You have the letter cutouts for sweet strawberries and fresh picked with a frame. Your letters will come in the protective box, I call it. So you might have to pop those out of that. Some have, just kind of fall out as on their own, but everything will come in a protective box for you in that way to protect the letters from breaking. You'll have the fruit basket, and that's 2 pieces, the bottom piece and the middle piece. You'll have the main strawberries, which are kind of that background strawberries, the ones sitting in the back. Then you have an individual strawberry that sits kind of on the top there. You have the 4 flowers that you'll be able to position wherever you want. I think I had mine 3 up on the top, and then I put 1 down at the bottom there. And those are your wood cutouts. Then you also will have 6 pots of paint. You'll have the super glue, individual super glue. You have 2 makeup sponges, a sanding block, a liner brush, and then the black sponge brush. What you will need for this is masking tape to hold down your small pieces. And, there's mine. There we go. Possibly scissors if you wanted to cut your makeup wedges, or if you needed to trim down your jute, so you might need some scissors. Baby wipes, damp rag, paper towels, things like that. Water cup to rinse your brush, tablecloth to protect your surface, and paper towels for cleanup, and a blow dryer to speed up the process if you want. And then your kit will also come with a tray to use for your paint purposes. I'm just using some wax paper here on the side for my paint tray. Okay, so that's what comes in your box. That's what you're gonna need. And now we can get started. So I'll reveal this, whoops. Here is what it looks like. And this is how I decorated the first one that we did. I did a white background with the pretty polka dots. I might do something a little bit different on this next one, we'll see. But aren't those colors just great? It is screaming summer and spring. So let me know if you grow strawberries. Throw that in the comments if you're watching this on Facebook. I would love to hear if you grow strawberries. I am going to attempt it this year. I have big plans for my garden this year. We will see how it goes though. I always bite off more than I can chew when it comes to things I get passionate about. But we will see. Okay, so the first step that I'm gonna do is tape down all my small pieces. I like using the masking tape to hold these small pieces. You can see how easy it is to move them around. I can pick this tape up and move it around. It acts like a tray. It helps hold the pieces while we paint them, and it also helps me not lose the pieces. And I just kind of fold this edge over just so I have something to pick it up with. I always recommend, as you're putting your pieces on the tape, to put them in order as how you would read them, so you make sure that you are painting the correct side, especially when dealing with the letters. Okay. And I like to make a piece of tape for the different colors that I'm using, so I don't accidentally put those, paint the wrong color. I kind of try and think about that, I guess, as I go. What colors I want to paint it, and then I put my tape together that way. And these blocks, the protective blocks, you can toss, but this would be something that you could use on another sign as just the negative part of the sign. Paint the wood and then put that down with this color being, and it would show that color underneath. That would be kind of cool too. But there, you can just toss them as well. The strawberries and the fresh picked will come together. I don't have mine. I've already taken mine apart, but the fresh picked has this little frame that sits around the outside of that. So I'm going to just tape that down to make it easier to paint. It probably doesn't need it, but I think it'll make it a little easier. And then the fresh picked. So you can see when I pick this up, they're staying within this protective box. So when you go to remove them from the protective box, I just use my fingernail and I kind of just pop them out. They should just pop out fairly easy. Do take care. Sometimes it requires a push from the back and the front to break that little tab that's holding the piece in. So I'll push it from the back or the front, and then it wiggles loose. Now, if the tab is a little too strong to push out with your finger, you can use a box cutter, a knife, or a X-Acto knife. And I have an X-Acto knife here, so let me just show you that. So on the back, you'll see, so this is the front, and it looks like it's all been cut, but on the back, there is a little tab that's holding that piece in. And so all you have to do is, if it's hard to push through with your fingernail or finger, and it's stuck pretty well, take your X-Acto knife, and I just hold it over that tab and press down. And you kind of heard that little snap there, but that will then break it away from your block. So just a little pressure. That tab is actually just on the back side. Again, that laser cuts through and then uses just a smaller amount of power where that tab is, leaving that little piece there to help hold it in. So using these, a knife, box cutter, or X-Acto knife can help get those pieces out. If they're a little more stuck than your fingernail can handle. Let's see here. Let me put that. Let me grab those pieces before I lose them here. The other thing you can think about too is painting them while they're in this protective box. You know, you could just leave them in here. I just had that idea. You could leave it right in here. Put this on your tape if you needed to, and then just paint them, and then snap them out after they're painted. And this would hold them for you. So consider that as well. I just had that thought. Fresh picked. Okay. I'll have to remember that when I do it next time and give it a try. All right, so let's move these off. Let's start with our base. I'm going to use the white. And as you're painting your piece, remember that I am here as a guide only. Paint your pieces however you want, with whatever colors speak to you, whatever your style is. I'm just here to guide you in the process, kind of step you through it, but use your colors that you love. You can also bring in your own paint colors. If the colors I sent are not something you want to paint with, you're more than welcome to use your own paint colors as well. Any sort of craft acrylic paints will work. Walmart paint, craft bottles, you know, the apple barrel paints work fine. Anything you can get at the big craft stores. Chalk paint works great. Okay, so I'm going to start by adding a little bit of water to my sponge brush. So I dipped it in there, held it for a few seconds to allow it to soak up that water. It's not dripping. You don't want it to be dripping full of water. I can sit here and it's not dropping water on my surface. That's what we want. We don't want too much water in that sponge brush. I'm going to take my white, I'm going to dip it right into that paint pot, and we're going to start painting. Now that water is going to start to help water down our white paint and help it flow better, because wood is super porous and it wants to soak up any sort of moisture that it has. Now the key here is to not get too much water. You don't want to see a pool on there. You don't want it to see anything like, if I were to pick this up and move it, I don't want to see water moving around on there. You don't want to get that much, because that can cause warping of the wood and is not good. Water and wood really don't mix. Water can cause really big damage to our wood pieces. So we don't want to get too much, but we also want enough to just help that paint flow. So I'm feeling like it's super scratchy. You can see that it's starting to get scratchy and not push that paint very well. So I grabbed a little bit more water in my makeup, or in my black sponge brush. I'm gonna go get, I almost had too much because it started to drip as I was painting. We don't want any water to drip. We want it to be just full enough that it's going to help that white paint flow. The other thing you can do is just take some of this white paint out of the pot, put it on your tray, and mix some water in that first. And you have a little more control that way. You can decide how much water you want in the paint to help it flow a little bit better. The first coat, we want it to be super light. It's going to look splotchy, but that's okay. What we're doing is we're priming the wood and putting that first coat down to seal it, to help it stop soaking up all of our paint, so that the next coat is going to look a lot better and it's not going to be nearly as hard to brush on. So you can see how it's super splotchy right now. You see a lot of that wood grain through that, and that's kind of what we want. So light coats is the key to working with these wood cutouts. You don't want to go, and it's really that way with everything. You don't want to go so heavy that you it takes forever to dry, and then you also can't get a really nice smooth surface when you do heavy coats. So, all right, let's bring out all of our other little pieces while our background dries, and we're going to use the makeup sponge. We're going to use the black sponge brush, so I'm going to give that a quick wash, and we're going to do a little color mixing in this one. So I try to, when I'm putting together colors, I try and think about different ways you can use the colors to create your own unique sign. And if you'll notice in my original, I have this really pretty greeny blue color, kind of a sea green color. Well, I did that by mixing colors with this really bright turquoise. And so this way, by mixing colors, it allows you to kind of experiment and play and get colors that you want. So I'm going to do a little color mixing. But again, you don't have to color mix. You could go directly with this teal color and call it good. Mixing colors allows us a little flexibility in that we can do something a little different than what we've sent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump a little of this teal color out. You can use your black sponge brush to mix, or you can use the end of your liner brush to mix your colors, however you want to do it. And then to get that green, pretty greeny teal sea green color that's kind of typical of the strawberry baskets, I'm going to add a little green to it. So I'm going to just dip my brush into there, and see, I've got about that much on my brush. I'm not dumping anything out, and I'm going to mix that together and see how that looks. This is going to give us that really pretty sea green color. If you need a little more green, add it. You can add more blue to it to make it look more blue. But see how putting those two colors, you can see them here. Let me just add them to my tray here. How that creates that sea green color. And if it's too dark, you can add a little bit of white to it. Let's just add just a titch of white to that. I'm going to use the back of my makeup or my liner brush here and dump just a little bit of white. I might have gotten too much, we'll see. And then adding that white just gives us that perfect color for our basket. Check that out, isn't that pretty? So experiment with your colors and mixing. When I first started crafting, I felt like I needed to have all the colors on the shelf. And for the longest time I did. I would go shopping and I'd see a color and be like, yep, or I'd be crafting and I'd be like, gosh, I wish I had that color. And it was to the point where then I had quite a few paint bottles on my shelf. And I still do. I still like to see new colors come out because the paint manufacturers always come out with new colors. So it's kind of fun to see and play with them. They're not that expensive. It's not that big of a deal. But what I found is I live in an area where I don't have access to big box stores or craft stores or anything like that. And so I, when I wanted a color, I could sit there and be bummed I didn't have that color to use, or I eventually figured out that I would just make my own colors. So I started experimenting with just, mixing colors. And I literally got a book, a sketchbook, and one day sat down and kind of had the primaries and just played and just mixed colors all day. Well, not all day, but for a couple hours anyways. And it was really fun to kind of create the color wheel and go, okay, this yellow with this blue makes this. And I highly encourage you to play with mixing colors because it's really fun. And it just opens up so many more color schemes, and you're not just stuck with, let's say this is the only green I had. Well, I now know I can make this into 4 different shades of green by mixing some things. So anyways, long story short, have fun with mixing colors. Okay, so I love that. So we'll let that dry. I'm going to set that off to the side. And I am going to, let's see. So in the original, I did this in red, and I think I'm going to do the fresh picked in this blue and see how it looks. Because I think that will kind of tie that together a little bit. It might be too light of a color. So instead of using a makeup sponge, I'm just grabbing my black sponge. I put a little bit of paint on that solid surface there. And just like the makeup wedge, I'm just going to tap it. I'm not going to brush, just tap. Then I don't need to use one of my makeup wedges. So I'm kind of experimenting. I want to see what this lighter color will look like inside that box. We'll see. It might be too light. It might get lost in all of the sign. It might have to go back to being black. We'll see. Okay. So the next thing is I am going to wash this again. And we're going to go into the red. And I'm going to paint the strawberries red. But I'm going to just paint the whole thing red. And then I'm going to come in on top with the liner brush and paint the green bits green. And then that way I'm not having to do detail work twice, if that makes sense. So we're just gonna go right over the top of everything. And again, you can use a makeup wedge for this. But you can see how I'm just going over the green bits as well. And then I'll come in with my green on top of the red, and then I'm only doing detail work once. Because with this red, I'm able to just come in here and quickly get my color down, not worry about cutting in around all those little leaves. In essence, just doing it once. So I have this idea of a tiered strawberry bed in my front yard. I have this area in the corner of my yard that's kind of just sitting empty. The playhouse was there, or we had a tree house type structure there, so there's a lot of gravel underneath, and I really don't want to plant grass there, so I'm thinking of creating a strawberry bed there. But I have tons of birds, so I'm worried about the birds eating my strawberries. So I know I'll have to possibly have some sort of cover for that. So I'm trying to work out all the logistics of growing strawberries. Okay. Then I'm going to take a makeup sponge and we'll paint the other pieces. So with your makeup sponge, just a quick tip, I gave you 2, but use a pair of scissors and cut them in half. That gives you 2 applicators. We hold it by the skinny end, and then this fat edge is our applicator. The other thing is, as you're working, if you have other crafty projects, let the paint dry on the end and then just cut it off when it's dried, and you then can use this for the next crafting project. So I can get, I don't know, six to 8 different uses out of one makeup sponge, makeup wedge. So we're gonna start with these flowers here. I dip my paint in the white, and you'll notice that there's a ton of white paint on the edge. We don't want that. We don't want it globbed on like that. So what you're gonna do is you'll load it up. It's called loading it up. Lots of paint, and then offload it. And by offloading it, I'm just finding an empty space on my tray here and tapping that paint off. What that does is that gets rid of that glob of paint, and it also helps the sponge soak up some of that paint and get it in the fibers. The reason that we offload it is while we're painting, we don't want paint to fall off the edge and get stuck in the small crevices of what we're painting. We want to keep that dark edge. It helps the elements pop off your sign. So as we're painting, we're just tapping up and down. You can go grab some more paint from your offload area here and go up and down. And again, nice light coats. White is translucent, and so it takes a couple coats to get a nice solid coverage. But we don't want to glob it on. We want to do light coats to get a smooth coverage. Plus it helps dry a lot faster if we deal with light coats. So white, you're gonna have that splotchy look. And when you're tapping up and down, just tap lightly. It's a medium pressure. I'm not tapping so hard that my sponge kind of curves off the edge of my surface and paints that. If you press really hard, you'll notice you'll start painting the edge because your sponge is kind of falling off the edge there, but a medium pressure keeps those edges nice and clean. Okay. So we'll let that dry. Again, it's, I'm not sure if those can see it, but it's super splotchy, and that's okay. First coat. All right, and then we're gonna get our other pieces out here. Let's see, I've got my sweet strawberry is gonna be in black, and then the frame here is gonna be in the red. So we load it, and you can kind of pull some of that paint off the edge, squeegee it off the edge, but there's still quite a bit, so I still like to offload it and make sure that that sponge is soaked up my color really well. And as you paint, you'll become familiar with colors and how they cover items, cover the wood pieces. Black is a great color that typically only needs one coat. And because it's the same color as the edge of our letters or whatever we're painting, it's a color I know I can be a little more aggressive with and a little more messy, because if I get paint on the edge with black, you're not going to know because it just blends in with the edge, that the black edge already. So I can be a little more aggressive and messy with when I'm painting with black. There we go. All right, let's bring out the red. We're gonna do the red around this frame here. So when I'm working with these, with the wood cutouts or any kind of project where I'm painting a lot of pieces, I like to go through and paint my first coat on everything and then go back and start again from the beginning and do a second coat on anything that I have that needs a second coat. And then the third step is to add detail and shadow and things. The other thing I wanted to mention is your baby wipes can come in handy. If you accidentally got paint on the edge, I just take a baby wipe and run it along the edge there, and that will pick it up. So if you catch it while it's wet, it's fairly easy to remove with a baby wipe. So I had gotten a little red on the inside there. I'll clean that up. If you don't notice it right away and it dries, you can use your sanding block to sand the edges like this, or you can use a brush and paint the edge black using that black paint, cover up the paint that might have fallen off the edge. Okay, so everything's got its first coat. I'm coming back to the beginning, which is our base here. And one thing I want to note with wood is it can become rough after putting your first coat on. So when you get your piece, it'll be nice and smooth, it feels great, you're ready to go, and then you paint your first coat and maybe it feels rough. This feels rough to me. And that is simply because some of the wood will expand when you get it wet. And sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. Wood is just different species, different way it was manufactured, how long it was sit to dry. All sorts of things come into play on how wood reacts to the paint that we apply to it. So, and you might just have a small section that's rough and everything else is still smooth. However that is, you have the sanding block here to help knock those fibers down. So when we apply the water, the paint, everything to the surface, those little fibers are just like spread out. You know, they get wet and they're like, and so that's what makes our surface hard or rough. Taking your sanding block, we're going to knock those fibers down. You don't want to sand so hard that you remove paint. Some paint will get removed, but you shouldn't be sanding it back down to the bare wood. So it's just a light sanding over the surface. Okay, and then I feel it, and there we go. It's back to that smooth surface, and you'll see that I did get some of that white paint sanded down, but not so much that I went back to that bare wood, right? So I'm just gonna clean that off real quick, and we can get our second coat of white down. Now this would be pretty with a really light green or a light blue background, a gray background, even a light pink I thought about doing. All you have to do is take your white and add like the smallest drop of any of these colors to it to create that light background, and that would be super pretty too. We're just gonna go with just the white. So I've got my, it's still got some red in it. I didn't clean it all that well, so we might be with a really light pink background. No. So kind of think about that too. You can just go so many different ways with the background instead of just the plain white. You could go gray, you could add some lines and make it look like slatted wood, distress it, add some edging, some black around the edges, which I think I'll do. There we go. Second coat looks great. And for those that are new, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but we include the score marks for proper placement or to help you place your items in a straight line. So you'll notice there's the sweet, let me bring it closer. You can still see the sweet strawberry outline. I included the score mark for the basket just to help get that first placement, and then everything builds off of that. And then the fresh picked down below. Now with score marks, the laser is scoring a line in the wood, and it's, I don't even know how deep it goes. Millimeters, fractions of an inch it goes down into the wood. It's kind of scoring just that top layer. But what that does is that allows us to kind of paint over those lines and still be able to see them. So as you're painting, don't feel like you have to work around those to be able to see those. I did 2 coats and I can still see where I can place those. There's some areas where it does fill with paint, but for the most part, I can still see those. So if you get heavy with your paint and it looks like you're losing those score marks, you can take like a poking tool or, you know, even just a sewing needle and just kind of pull out that paint from the score marks so that you can see those for proper placement later. You don't have to do the whole thing, maybe just an area where it's like, okay, I got that side is gonna be there, you know, and kind of clean that up. If you get really heavy with your paint, it takes a lot of coats to cover the score marks though, so I think you should be good. Okay, second coat done, and I'm thinking that that's going to be the final coat, but I'm going to let that dry and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so let's go back to our basket and our fresh picked here. And this has gotten a little rough, so I'm going to take my sanding block and sand it down. There we go. And lightly sand the fresh picked as well. Okay, so I want to add some shadows and some different things to my basket. So I'm going to go and grab my liner brush. I'm going to get it wet. And I've still got some paint here to work with. I want to darken some of this greeny blue. So I'm going to dip my brush in the black, the tiniest bit of black. Black is super potent, so you only need a small amount. I get a little more water to loosen this up. It's kind of sat here and dried a little bit. It's kind of tacky. There we go. I'm gonna add a little more black. Just get a shade darker. Okay, and I've got that. And the basket sits like this, right? So this is kind of a lip, this piece. So under that lip, there would be a shadow. So I'm just gonna drag that dark color. It's hardly visible that it's even darker, but just gonna drag that down under here. As it dries, it will get darker, and that's the thing to think about too. It might not look like much, but let it dry and see how it looks. So you can see how it's just a shade darker there, and that's all we need. And then I can go into I'm gonna grab a little bit of that original mixed color and blend it out. It's kind of got this hard line right there. So I'm just gonna add that down and just try and soften up that line there. Adding a little water to your brush can really help that paint flow. So if it's feeling tacky and hard to push around, add water to your brush. So we've got a little shadow there. Then I'm also going to add some shadow area to the bottom here. So I'm going to mix just a little more black into that area. I need a little more paint. Make sure that it's wet. And I'm just going to kind of come in around the little openings that are on the bottom of the basket. Little color. Okay, and then on the lip here, it's sitting under the strawberries. So right along that top, the strawberries are going to create a shadow on that lip. So I'm going to add some of that dark. Color that I have, just right, a small little smidge of that right on the top of this lip, where the strawberries are creating a shadow. There we go. The other way that you can do it that I like to play around with is, and I'm going to show you here. So that's one way, just creating your mixed darker color on your palette there with a little bit of black and brushing it on. The other way that you can do it is using a baby wipe, which is one of my favorite ways. I'm going to grab some black here. So I've got a little black on my baby wipe. I'm going to offload that. I don't want to have too much. So I took a lot of that black off. And then I'm going to grab my piece and I'm going to hold it at the edge there. Some of that baby wipe's going to kind of catch the top, and most of it's going to be just right on the edge there, which we don't care about. But as I drag that, you'll notice that it starts to deposit some of that black on my surface, and it's kind of a watered down black because our baby wipe is wet. So you can use this with a baby wipe or a kind of just an old rag that's damp. Just make sure that it's wet because it will help that flow. And see how that creates a really pretty shadow too. So if you want more of a defined shadow, you can use that kind of that baby wipe method. Or if you want more of a subtle shadow, you can use the brush. Now, if you get too much using the baby wipe, it's really easy just to grab an area of your baby wipe that isn't being used, and you can just kind of lift that color up. And then it also kind of helps to kind of push that color around and soften it too. So either way works. You can kind of play with that a little bit. So I'm going to come in and add some a little bit darker shadow at the bottom of my basket. There we go. Okay. All right, so the basket is done. My fresh picked is done. Now I want to work on my strawberries. Now before I paint my strawberries, the greenery, I want to add some shadow to the strawberries as well. Let me sand that. It's feeling a little rough. Okay, so I'm going to use the baby wipe method. I'm going to get a little black on my edge here and kind of just bring some of that black along the bottom of my strawberries. This area right here between the 4 strawberries is where this strawberry sits. So in case anything is peeking out when I put that strawberry on, I think there is a small area that does get peaked, that kind of shows. I'm going to just make that area dark. So using this baby wipe, I'm adding the dark in there because it is going to be in the shadow of that strawberry. So let me lay that on there to show you here. So it kind of sits here. You kind of can place it wherever you want, but you'll notice that in some areas, you know, there's that part that will show kind of down at the bottom, and we do want that to be a little dark in that shadowy bit. And it looks pretty bad right now, but you don't see most of that. So then I'm going to take and kind of just bring some shadow around the bottom of some of these other strawberries. Again, if it gets to be too dark, just use a clean area and remove it. You can also use the brush method like we did on the basket, which is just a little more of a softer method. It creates some more of a soft shadow. This is more bold and dramatic. And it's a little less controlled. You know, we're dealing with a baby wipe in these small areas. So I have a little less control, but that's okay. I kind of like the randomness that happens. It's just kind of all a preference. So whatever you want to do there. Okay, so there are my shadows. I added a lot of shadow right here. This strawberry is the furthest from us. The bottom, I'm kind of thinking my light source is at the top. That's the other thing you want to think about, is where's your light coming from and what piece is on top of what in terms of, you know, your strawberries. So if my light is kind of up here shining down this way, this is going to be dark. This strawberry part is in the back, so we've got shadow here, and this is kind of lighter there. I added a shadow here because my light is hitting right here in this point. My light's hitting this, and then this strawberry is in the back, so it's a little bit darker all the way around. Okay, and then this strawberry is gonna sit like this. So my light is hitting at this top area, so this part of the strawberry is gonna be in the shadow. So I'm just gonna add some dark black down here at the bottom here. Adding shadow and highlights really elevate our pieces from looking flat. And I know it can be a little scary to add this dark color, but I encourage you to give it a try. And every layer of paint that we add just adds more detail, more dimension to our piece. So it can kind of look super bad to begin with. I mean, this doesn't look the greatest right now. It looks splotchy and bad, but once I add some highlights to it and paint the green, we're gonna start to see that dimension come out. It's gonna add so much to our project. Okay, so I'm gonna let those sit for a little bit, and then I'm gonna come in with some highlights and get that green painted. Let's get a second coat on our flowers here. So using that makeup sponge, I'm gonna put a second coat on. Okay, there we go. And that is done. The sweet strawberry is black, so I don't need a second coat on that. And my frame looks great, so we're good there. I'm gonna come back to my main piece and just check it out. I was gonna add polka dots, but I think I'm gonna leave it the plain white and do more of a distressed look on it. So I'm going back to my baby wipe. I'm gonna go into that black, and I'm gonna add some black around my edges. Just dragging that baby wipe around my edge there. Again, if it gets to be too much, use a clean part of your baby wipe and wipe it away, blend it in. I really love how this just gives it kind of an outline almost. Just a little more dimension. And I'm gonna kind of pull that around my little hanger opening there, just to make it look like it's a little more worn in that area. Soften it up a little bit, just pushing that color around. And there we go. You kind of see some of that distressing happening. But we're gonna leave this one white in this example. Remember, you can do whatever you want. Paint it a color, add your polka dots. To add the polka dots in the original, I did just use the back of, let me see here. I'm going to use the back of this, but I used the end of my brush here. Just dip it in the paint. Just a small little amount of paint on the brush. Creates these really pretty polka dots. So if you want to do polka dots, you can use the back of your brush there. The other thing is when you're doing polka dots with the back of your brush, the size of your brush handle will give you different polka dot sizes. So this one's a super small size brush. You can use the end of your black sponge brush, and that will give you a larger polka dot. If you have other brushes available, you can use those, such as this guy is a large flat and it's got a larger handle, so that would give me a bigger polka dot. Kind of play with what you've got and play around with that. The end of a pencil also works great because there's the eraser's a little flexible. The only thing I want to mention, if you use a pencil, is make sure the eraser hasn't been used. Like this one's, you know, been used to erase things, so it's rounded off. You want your eraser to be nice and flat. Okay, let me wipe that off before I get little red polka dots everywhere. Okay, there's that. That is done. I'm not going to glue quite yet. I want to make sure that all my pieces are painted before I do that. So I'm going to bring in my flowers here and add a little yellow center using my liner brush. And then let's add some detail to our strawberries. So before I paint the leaves, I'm going to add some highlight. So I'm going to grab a little bit of red and some white, mix that together, and loosen it up. It's a little bit tacky. And I'm just going to bring in some highlights in some areas here. Kind of where that light would hit, kind of following the line of that strawberry. I created that arc to bring in a highlight there. Okay, all right, so let's paint the leaves. So a couple different ways that you can create different colors of green. So we've got our green here, but green and yellow make a really pretty bright spring green. So if we wanted to create a lighter shade, we can add a little yellow to it and get a really pretty spring green, super bright. And this is going to be different than if we just went green and white. Green and white are going to give you more of a minty color, whereas green and yellow give you something a little brighter that's more springy. So you can kind of see those two colors mixed together. Now if you wanted to go darker, you could go black, add a little black to the green to get a darker shade. What I'm going to do is actually add a little white to the spring green I got and get just a little bit of a lighter shade. So I've got 3 different shades going on that I can play with to create some dimension. So I'm going to start with this dark color and not wash my brush. I'm just going to go, and I'm going to go with that original dark green on this leaf that's at the bottom here. This leaf is sticking out under the strawberries, so I want it to be darker than the others because it's in the shadow. Okay, and then I want my leaf lines to be bright and not full of paint. So I am going to take my little poker here and clean out those lines as I go. Use whatever you have on hand. If you don't have a poker tool like this, you can use a safety pin, a push pin, anything that's kind of sharp that way. So I cleaned out that line so it's nice and defined. Okay, so then I'm going to flip this around and start painting up here. And I'm going to use this lighter green that I have with the yellow in it and just start painting all of my greenery up at the top. I'm just going to take my time and go slow and work my way around all the stems. Now because it's got the red underneath, it's going to take a couple coats. Remember to do nice light coats. We'll do one, it will dry super fast, and then we'll do a second coat. So I kind of bounce between all the shades and just let my brush mix those different shades on my surface. So I'm kind of going in between this darker original green and that spring green with the yellow mix. Just kind of letting that blend happen on my surface here. So we've got all sorts of different shades of green happening. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry. Before I go on, I am going to clean out my leaf lines. And I'll do this one. There we go. We can come in with our second coat as soon as it's dry. Kind of work back to where I started and go that route. Again, just bouncing between my colors here that I've created to get some different variation in the greens on the tops and in the leaves. Okay, you can see how some are using that lighter green and some are using the darker green. And that again really just helps with that dimension that we're after. Make it look like a more of a 3D piece. A little dark back in there. It's kind of all of these pieces are kind of blending together, so I'm going to try and get them separated by using some different shades here. There we go. Perfect. And we'll come in and add a second coat here. And our strawberries are almost done. Aren't they looking fantastic? See how all of those different shades are starting to work together with each other? Okay, so the last part of the strawberries is adding the seeds. So I'm gonna add some black to my plate here. And I'm going to add some water to it because it's been sitting open for quite some time. Acrylic paint dries super fast, which means it's drying fast in our cups. And I want it to be nice and loose. So I added a couple drops here just to make sure I have some nice flowing black. And using my brush, I'm just going to drop it and do just a small little pull. Now when you're adding your strawberry seeds, the strawberry seeds aren't going to run horizontal to the strawberry, they run vertical. So you got to think about that when you're adding them. And then also I kind of bring them around. So they're widespread at the top and a little bit bigger, and then they get smaller and more condensed around the tip here. So we're going to go just and use a very light pressure. They don't all have to be the same, but as I get smaller to the end, I'm going to make them a little smaller and more condensed. Make sure I'm in the frame here. Okay, so think about that when you're doing these strawberries as well. Do one at a time, and if it helps, put the tip of the strawberry towards you so you kind of have an idea of how those seeds should point down towards the tip. Oh, that one got a little long, that's okay. See my long seed there? That's all right. There we go. I'm going to grab some red here and try and shorten this one up just a little bit. Yeah, make that blend back in there. It's a little bit long. There we go. And there are our strawberries. Love it. And you could add even some white seeds if you want. I know that some strawberries get white at the bottom. However you want to do that. All right, so now we're ready to glue up, and I'm going to start my kind of at the top and work my way down. I like to lay all my pieces out as I'm working, just so they're in the right order. Super glue dries super fast, and so I want to be ready to where I need to put those pieces as I go. Again, this also helps me to make sure that I've painted the right side by laying them out just one more time and seeing how they look on the surface here. So one thing about the super glue is not everybody loves super glue. It doesn't smell the greatest. It can get kind of messy. So if you don't want to use your super glue, you don't have to. You could use an all-purpose glue. You could use a Lean's tacky glue. You could use a different type of super glue if you have one that's your favorite. One that I really like and use quite a bit is the Stick Fast Instant Adhesive. I like that better than super glue for most of my projects. I've also used this Star Bond, which is nice. It's a really thick glue so it doesn't run. But at any rate, you can use what you want for glue. The one thing that I do want to mention while you're working with small pieces like this is that the glue dries clear, because there are times where, you know, some of the glue will seep out and you don't want to have big yellow globs everywhere. The Elmer's all-purpose glue works really great. Not the school glue, but you can get Elmer's all-purpose and that dries clear and works really well. I like using it. Okay, so I'm going to turn my sign so I can see this top here. Let me just talk about how to open this. So when it comes, it's going to come in two parts. Inside the applicator is a little opening that's going to pierce your bottle. So you do not need to pre-open your bottle. Screwing this on will open it for you. When you're ready to open it, don't open it until you're ready, let me say that. But hold it by the seam, not the bottle, because holding it by the bottle is going to apply pressure inside, and as you screw your applicator on, glue will come squirting out. So it's really important that you hold it by this seam. The other thing is as you're putting your applicator on and it opens the bottle for you, glue will come out. So make sure that you're holding it upright like this, not down like that. Otherwise, glue will fall out, okay? So we're just going to screw this on. I kind of get to the point where I feel some pressure and I know it's about ready to open it. And then I just go really nice and slow until I feel like that applicator has pierced my bottle. You'll even see some bubbles come out the top. And I like to just go really slow because I hate having the super glue on my finger. There it goes. And it just squirted out the top. Okay, so we're ready to go. When you are gluing your piece, it only needs a couple drops. Super glue is super strong and only needs a few drops here and there. So for these small pieces, I find the fattest part of the letter and put one drop on that. And then I'm going to lay this down in its spot. The other thing I like to have, again, if you don't have one of these, a pin, I like to just use this to help move my piece around because I feel like my fingers just get in there and mess it up. So I kind of use this to help move it to its right location. That works for me. You can also get some tweezers if that helps to handle these small pieces, but I kind of get it where it needs to go in general, and you know, and then I'm able to use this tool to help just position it correctly. You have to work fast though. Super glue sets up super fast, like within 10 seconds I think you have, which again is something that not everybody likes. So if you like to have more flexibility, more time to work, then definitely get a different glue, something like an all-purpose glue. I know a Lean's tacky glue dries fast, but not as fast as super glue. So you do have some room to work there. And I know I've been asked about wood glue, and since we're working with wood glue, you would think we would use wood glue, but wood glue is more for construction of furniture and whatnot. So it's not something that I feel we need for our signs that are not going to be needing to be in a tornado or something, or or a windstorm, or things like that. So the holding power of wood glue is really great, but it's not something that's totally necessary for the small signs and things that we do that are just going to be sitting on our wall or hanging or whatever. And I haven't found a good wood glue that dries clear. So I don't recommend a wood glue. It's not necessary, I should say. So like this big piece, I'm not putting glue everywhere. I'm just hitting a couple spots where, there's an intersection or a big area. And then I drop it where I want it. And then I can use this tool to line it up. Now the score marks should sort of disappear as you're putting it on. They are the exact same size as your letters. So it's kind of handy to rotate your piece around and kind of see it from different angles to make sure that it is right in line where you want it. All right, and then I'm gonna go right straight to the basket here. And get my basket down, using those score marks as a guide. Make sure it's centered. And one thing I forgot to mention is if you want to do your own thing and place your pieces in a different area than I have, then you can use the back of your banner. The back of the banner is blank, no score marks. That gives you all the artistic freedom that you may want to place your pieces and do something a little different. That is an option for you if you want. Maybe you want fresh picked at the top and street. I don't know why I keep saying street. Sweet strawberries at the bottom. Or maybe you don't want to even use fresh picked and you want to leave that off. So I'm just kind of placing this in the center of that blank spot there. You can have it tilted, you can have it more straight up, however you want to put that last strawberry there. And then I'm going to add my flowers around, and there's no right or wrong here. There's a couple small, there's a couple large, however you want to place those, whatever looks best to you. But oh my gosh, that's just the icing on the cake, these little white flowers. And they kind of hang off, so make sure that where you glue is actually a point on either a strawberry or the basket so they don't fall off on you. Here we go. So cute. All right, now the test is to see if my fresh and the teal green is gonna look okay. I think it will be all right. I'm gonna glue it down, and if I don't like it, I can always just very carefully paint it black. Love how fresh this looks for spring. It felt like, well, it didn't feel like it. It was one of the longer winters we had, and it was tough. The winter blues set in and didn't just want to give up. Okay, let's glue this down. So take your time here, go slow. These little letters just need about 1 drop of glue. And then push them around until you find the spot. And as you're gluing, one thing I noticed in my experience is as I'm working and painting, my fingers get dirty. And then I press down and I end up depositing the paint from my fingers onto here, or it sticks and lifts up the letter. So you might want to just take your baby wipes or a rag and clean up your fingertips there. Depending on the applicator you have, you can just add glue to your base too. I don't have my glue bottles here. I wish I did. Dang it. I'll have to show you next time. These glue bottles I got off Amazon that have a precision tip. So it's a really tiny needle type tip. And they were great for small applications. And especially if you're using something other than super glue, you could put your all-purpose glue in there, your Aleene's glue in there, and really just have more control over it. I bought them for painting purposes. I wanted to use them to paint with, but I found that putting glue in them works really well too. I thought I had one in here. I guess I don't. And I use them in classes because it really helps in classes. Folks get that precision for placing small items. I try not to use super glue in classes because it is not for everybody. And I find that when I do use super glue, most people get super frustrated with it and walk out with super glue all over their fingers. So I try not to use it unless absolutely necessary, if a piece just won't stick. Those little bottles are sure handy. And I have tweezers that I've tried to use to place these small things, but I just couldn't ever get the hang of it. But there are tweezers out there that work opposite of tweezers. I wonder if I have mine here to show you guys. They're always closed. So they kind of have this zigzag option here, so they're always closed. And to open them, you got to squeeze, right? And then it opens it because it's got that zigzag design. So then you open it, and then you don't have to always squeeze it to hold it. It's just in that locked position. I'll have to find those. But those can be helpful for dealing with small pieces too. I have all these great tools that I felt like I needed. And then half the time I get in such a rush that I'm just like, oh, I don't know where it's at. I'm just going to go with it and then never use it. All right, there we go. I think that's going to be great. All right, so then we've just got our frame to put on. Let's see how this, oh yes, I love that. That blue inside, I know it probably doesn't look that great on camera, but I think the blue really just, or that green blue I should say, just adds a little bit more color to that bottom words. So one thing with this design that I'm super proud of is this was all, I shouldn't say all but one thing was hand sketched by me. And a lot of times I mean, all the designs are by me, right? But a lot of times I'll buy font or I'll buy elements and kind of put them together how I want. Whether that might be, I might buy an image of a strawberry and then kind of play with it until it's on the piece that I have. But this one was all something I sketched in my iPad, which is what is my goal, is to start doing more of my own sketching from completion, from start to finish. And so this one is that. So the fresh picked is my handwriting, which I've never really liked my handwriting. So that was kind of something I just kind of put out there, and I think it worked out okay. So to add your, let me stop talking about the design. To add your hanger, I'm putting one tail in one hole, one tail in another, and I'm going to pull it tight. So you've kind of got this look happening to start with. And then I'm going to bring my two tails together, wrap it around my finger, and then put those tails through that hole. So I've created that opening right there. I'm going to put those tails through that and create a knot. And I discovered this is called a sailor's knot. Well, the website that I saw it on that's what it's called. So hopefully the website was valid. You never know. You never know what you read on the internet, if it's true or not. Sadly, that is crazy. But anyways, sailor's knot on the back there. So that way, when you go to the front, you can pull this up. The knot is hidden, and you can cut those tails to be a little shorter. I'm just going to flip it. I think if I flip it, there we go. Then that knot stays hidden in the back, and you've got more of a pretty hanger here at the front. So there we go. That is our Joy Box this month. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure to post your pictures. I want to see what you guys create, what colors you use, what patterns you might incorporate. Remember, you can add paper to things with some Mod Podge. We've done a few tutorials on that, so that's always a fun thing to do. But have fun, enjoy your crafting time, make it a priority for yourself, for your sanity. You deserve it. So, oh, I wanted to show you, because this is kind of one of my very first official, well, that's not true. I guess I did one before that too, but so I have an iPad where I have, it's called Procreate, and I have the pen. So if you have an iPad and kind of a newer one, you can use any sort of pen really, but I have the Apple pen that comes with it. Procreate is a free app that lets you kind of sketch and draw. So I'm going to go into Joy Box, and here is what I drew. So you can kind of see it does get refined in the software I used to cut the design, but this was all hand drawn to create that. And so there we go. How cool is that, huh? Anyways, super excited to start diving into doing more of my own designs like that. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to crafting with you next month. I look forward to, actually, I think I have it. So this is, I'll do a little sneak peek, guys. So those who are still with me to the very end, this is a quick sneak peek of next month's. I'm excited about it. I haven't seen anything with a flag draping yet on some signs, so we're excited for next month. Anyways, have a great May, and I will chat with you later. Bye.